Hello and welcome to While You're at the Library, your favorite gather around the table and talk about books show. So here we are. I'm Catherine Poulter, the children's librarian, and here's John Bickelhaupt. Who are you and what do you do?
Who are you?
Who
are you?
I'm not Admiral Stockton, I know that. But, I work up in reference.
Very good.
If you can call it working. So
It's always good to be working.
Library work is like no other work.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yes. Kath Ann, what do you do?
I am Kath Ann Hendricks. I'm the young adult librarian, and I guess we like to say you can't call it a job if you're enjoying it so much, but I don't know. Some days are not as good as others, but most days are great.
Yes.
I love my job.
Thank you.
I'm Becky.
Very
I know
good.
you were going to introduce me.
Becky who?
Hello, Becky.
I'm the lead circulation librarian, and I help people find books.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And then here's Trent.
Hello. I also am a reference specialist, and it is work, but it's work that I enjoy.
Yeah, that's good. Why don't you start and tell us some of the books about one of the books that you brought?
Okay. Well, let's start off with Gardens of the High Line. This is a lovely, lavishly illustrated picture book. And what this is, in the last decade, a stretch of old railway in New York City, about 1.75 miles stretch that was a spur of the Manhattan Railway, was set aside and developed into basically this great big public garden.
Nice.
There are other municipalities worldwide that have also caught on to this idea of taking antiquated, unused infrastructure and turning it into public spaces instead of just having derelict-looking spaces. Mm-hmm. And it's really revitalized the area that this runs through. And so this lovely book just has shot after shot after shot of the garden. This lovely public garden. It shows you, where the line extends and what neighborhoods it runs through.
is that the one that goes by the old Bell Telephone Laboratories?
It's possible. I didn't do that much research into it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's elevated.
It is. It's elevated.
Uh-huh.
This was public transportation that went above ground instead of the subway that goes below the ground, and that's why they were able to make a garden out of it. But as you can see, this is just a lovely, lovely space.
Oh, that is. With flowers and trees and...
Flowers and
trees. Does it
trees.
have vegetables also?
I believe that there are sections where there are vegetables, where it's like a public garden, but I think it's mostly flowers.
Mm-hmm.
I think there would be too much of a fight over the resources if they turned it into something that people could eat.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, it's a bright spot in a bunch of asphalt.
Oh, that's beautiful. How did they get the dirt there, or was it already there?
I think that they actually transported some soil into it, but it's amazing how quickly things degenerate, and as you walk in
break down into more soil.
and break down into a soil, yeah. But any stretch of pavement that isn't maintained, we see that in our own city.
Mm-hmm.
It's already breaking down into soil, and you have plants growing up through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that they didn't have to work too hard. But anyway, this is a lovely new book that we have at the library that people can peruse.
Beautiful.
And perhaps it might inspire some of our citizens to look at spaces that are unused and
Or to
make
go
gardens
there.
out of them. I don't want to travel to
Amazing.
New York just to see a garden.
But if you happen to be there...
If I happen to be there, I would definitely go take a look.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Becky, what do you have for us?
All right, so I have Gregory Maguire's new book, Hidden Sea. This has a beautiful cover, a lot of detail work on it. This is
Now, who's Gregory Maguire? Who is he? What did he write?
Wicked.
Yes!
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Obviously, we're fans here. So this is the tale of the once and future Nutcracker. So if you've ever wondered about who might have made the Nutcracker, this is the book for you. I found it a little bit slower than The Wicked, or maybe even The Ugly Stepsister. That one's probably his favorite of mine. But it was a pretty good read. We have it marked as a Christmas book, but I would say you could read this any time of year. The one thing I did like about it is it talks a lot about music, especially a cello player that is one of the characters in here. It was a fun read, and it's definitely a different look.
Is there a girl named Clara or a girl named Marie?
Clara is in here. I'm trying to think, because it's been a little while since I've read it. There's a couple of different girls in there. I don't remember Marie.
Okay.
But yeah, this was a pretty good one. It's worth a read. So right now it's on the new shelf in the adult fiction section. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is every Wednesday on our Facebook page, we are doing a video, What Are You Reading Wednesdays? And that is helping come up with ideas of different categories to read for our 50/50 book quest. So if you have run into a rut or you need new ideas, something to read, we are going to be asking people what they're reading, and not just librarians, but even some of the community members.
I saw that there was a rabbit, was it? Or a
Koala
bear?
koala.
Yes.
Yes, there was an appearance of a koala even.
Very nice. Thank you.
It's a large koala.
You
Yes.
know, and that's really
Eating cabbage.
really funny because, and I'll talk about this book the next time, but I'll briefly mention it. I'm reading one right now for my book group. That is called Furiously
Happy.
Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I was going to say Furiously Funny.
But it is funny.
It is funny, but at one point in the story, she's talking about a trip she's made to Australia, and she really, really wants to hold a koala bear. She dresses up in a koala bear outfit, but they won't let her hold the koala bear.
Aww.
Anyway, there's a whole bunch. This is going to be a wild book, and I just laugh thinking about it.
Well, tell us
So
about one
what
of
I
the other
came
ones.
to talk about, besides a million other things, is a book that I just finished reading that has won an award. Actually, it's the honor book. So every year, the American Library Association has its American Library Association Media Awards, and that's where we get our Newbery winners and our Michael Prince Awards, which is the Newbery winner for teens, as well as many others, Caldecott winners.
Yes.
This one happens to have gotten an honor for first time book written for young adults, or first time this author has written for young adults.
Great.
So she may have written other books. I don't remember that she has exactly, but in this particular instance, it's the first book she's written for young adults, and it is called Starfish. And I had a coworker that said she read it and said it was one of the best books she'd read lately, and I have to agree with her. So if you have read Eleanor and Park, which I've talked about before, by Rainbow Rowell, similar story. In this book, there's a young girl, well, she's not that young, she's just getting ready to graduate from high school. Her name is Kiko Himura, and she's living with her mother with her two brothers. Her parents have divorced. She and her two brothers both look very Japanese because their father was Japanese. And she is an artist, and she has always felt just sort of not good enough. Her mother has never given her much encouragement. Her mother's very self-absorbed, and her mother is blonde and pale-skinned, and her focus in life is beauty, what people look like. And Kiko has no friends that look like her in her school. Her younger brother Shijo is wrapped up in manga and learning Japanese a little bit, but he just sort of hides behind his manga books. Her older brother Taro is in college, and he makes his appearance every now and again at the house, but he's kind of gruff and acts like he doesn't care. Well, Kiko does care, and she feels she's like always trying to impress her mother, always wanting to please her mom and find some way of reaching her and finding that acceptance that she's never felt from her. Her father, meanwhile, has remarried and now has twin babies. And all of her life, Kiko has thought she was the cause of the divorce. Her mother blamed her, and she believed that it was something that she said, an incident that occurred to her when her Uncle Max was visiting when she was 7. And she told her mother about it, and her mother didn't believe her. her mother just said, "Oh, you must have been imagining that," or "It can't have been that bad," or "You don't know what it is that's happened though until the end of the book." So she goes to a graduation party. Doesn't have very much confidence. She gets coerced or convinced to go with a friend named Emery. And she runs into an old friend named Jamie, who used to be her childhood best friend until he and his family moved to California. And she hasn't heard from him in like 8 years, and there he is. And somehow they strike up the relationship again, and he kind of takes the place of Emery for a while because Emery is now moving on to go to college, and gives her confidence to do things that she didn't think she could do. But underneath all of this is her relationship, or lack of a relationship, with her mother. Super good story about her being strong, coming into an understanding of what she needs to do that's best for her life. Yes, depending on friends, but finally, in the end, she comes to realization that she needs to do some things for herself before she lets, everybody else do things for her. And, it's very sad that her mother was like the way she is, but
Can't change her.
she can't change her. She can only change how she reacts to her mother, and has a great ending. Some wonderful things happen along the way. If you liked Eleanor and Park, I would thoroughly recommend Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman.
Great. Thank you. John.
Well, so David Bowie died recently, and he's kind of the soundtrack to my high school years. I think well, a lot of people of my generation he was. So this biography came in recently, and I haven't read it yet, but I intend to, because it's an oral biography. So it's made up of
Dictated?
it's made up of, there's like information culled from interviews that he gave, and then also a lot of talking with people that he knew that were friends of his. And I really like that kind of approach to putting together a history of pop music, because another book that I've read that I thought was really good was a Grateful Dead book called "This Was All a Dream We Dreamed," which was an oral history, and was really, it's a lot of sort of pop culture biographies get sort of this kind of breathless kind of presentation of the subject that seems removed from, kind of removes them from the reality of their humanness.
Right.
And so the oral biographies seem less prone to that. And so
Yeah, because they're talking about a real person they knew
Right.
instead of lauding some
right, and so
unknown person.
yeah, so I'm really looking forward to reading all of this. So
Cool.
yeah.
Nice. Well, I have to tell you about this book. This is one that I and my friend Hannah wrote. As you can see, it's just made out of a paper cover. It's called Amazing Smells of Paris. Well, happily now, this is available as an ebook. And so we have it downloaded onto the iPads at the library so that any kids can read it. And if you go to www.hattobooks.bigcartel.com, this is available to download also. It does cost a little bit, but not very much. And then you can read this and see it in an ebook form. We're still hoping to print it someday, and we will, but at least now it's on ebook, so it's available.
Is it a matter of a certain number of copies being sold as ebooks, or?
Yes, and figuring out all the ins and outs and how-tos about figuring out where to get it printed. And so.
Tell us about the illustrator.
Okay, the illustrator, and she also helped write it, is a wonderful friend of mine. She lives in Paris, and she's funny and brilliant and quite a great artist. there's the picture of the Eiffel Tower. This is about a little mouse that goes to Paris to find a smell from his childhood. And he's drawn in charming ways. And, oh, I need to show you at the very end. Hannah sent me this. It's the picture of Jacques and Francois, and it says, "Bonjour from Paris." So I really like this. Hatto Books is the publishing company that Hannah has started. So that's the little plug for our ebook.
From a local librarian.
From a local
very
librarian.
Local librarian.
Very local, that's right. Is that redundant?
Local.
Local. Maybe both. Anyway. Trent, tell us some more about some of the things that you've brought.
Okay. This nice little volume is called Personal Stereo. And this is about the Walkman, its introduction into our culture, into our lives, and kind of examines its effect on our culture and on who we've become. It also, to give the Personal Stereo a little bit of context, in the beginning it talks a little bit about the formation of the Sony company, and because Sony, basically was the inventor of the personal stereo,
right?
And they were the ones that did it first, and so it talks a little bit about their formation at the end of the Second World War, and then goes into the big bomb that was the first Walkman that was put on the market in 1979. I still have my very first Walkman. I lost the battery thing that protected the battery compartment, but I've still got the Walkman and it still works.
Oh,
that was given
cool.
me in the mid 80s. But yeah, there were a lot of people who were very excited about the whole fact that you could surround yourself with music of your choice and sounds of your choice, and yet there were also people who noticed that people were cutting themselves off from society and not participating in what was going on around them. And so they also kind of indicate here in this little book that this was the beginning of that whole disconnection that we're seeing, that we're talking about now with so many people with their smartphones and that kind of thing. But this is part of a series, and we're looking into getting more books in this series that examine objects in our culture that have had a transformational effect on our culture. They've got things like remote control, golf ball, driver's license, drone, glass, phone booth, things of that nature. So just these little things
that made such a
big difference. But yes, personal stereo. And if I ever find a pink Walkman, I think I might buy it because that looks enticing.
Wow. That's cool. Thank you.
Well, the nonfiction book I brought is called The Great Potluck Cookbook by Good Housekeeping. And this book has got some really great recipes in it, and it's got some pretty awesome pictures of a lot of the different recipes. My cooking book group, we call ourselves the NPO Recipe Box. This is the book group that we just discussed, and so we went through and we tried the fizzy cranberry lemonade punch, the s'more bars, the rich stovetop baked beans, and the turkey and mashed potato pie. Let me tell you, all these recipes were awesome. So I assume out of trying 4 recipes out of here, not having a dud, we've got a pretty good book here.
Very good.
So this small book, I mean, it's really small in size. It has over 100 recipes in it that would be appropriate to take to a potluck. And you can find it upstairs in the 641s. So
nice. Thank you. That makes my mouth water.
so good.
Good.
Well,
Catherine.
okay, I am going to talk about this one first. Okay, so we have graphic novels, and in my teen collection, I have graphic novels for children through teens.
Sure.
And this happens to be a new one that just came across my desk that I read today. It is based on the book by Deborah Ellis by the same title. So you can see the original illustration for her book here, and this is the graphic novel illustration. So this one was adapted from the feature film directed by Nora Twomey, but it's actually I don't know how they say who it's written by, because it doesn't have the same name on the spine.
Not Deborah Ellis.
Shelley Tanaka is considered the author of the graphic novel, but it is based on the book by Deborah Ellis. And this is a story about a young girl in Afghanistan, and she's 11, and this is during the Taliban rule. And her father they're living in one room of a bombed out apartment in Kabul, and her father is a history teacher, and he ends up being taken away for having forbidden books, because that was against the law. Education was frowned on. Women were kept hidden away or covered, and it was one of the Taliban's reactions. You know, they were very strict, thinking that this would help. She has an historical note in the back that explains this history. And after having read Persepolis, which was also a graphic novel, and that was about Iran, this is, you know, it tells you some more about what was going on, and it just amazes me. Country after country takes over. You know, starts out with, they talk about their history. It's the father's telling her about the stories and how they were the pathway to everywhere, carrying goods from east to west. The land where people were its greatest treasure, but we were at the edges of empires that war with each other. So you had Cyrus the Great of Persia came in, then Alexander the Great, then Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, and so on and so on, then the British, then the Russians, and on and on and on. So this young girl, when her father's arrested, ends up, her name's Parvana, they can't support, she's got a mother and an older sister with a baby, and they can't support themselves because they're not allowed to go out in public as females unless they're with a male, and they really pretty much aren't allowed. So she cuts her hair and she pretends to be a boy.
So she can be the breadwinner.
So she can be the breadwinner of the family. And things become very desperate, and she wants to find her father, who has been taken away to prison, and so she's trying to get enough money together, bribe money, and she meets another friend on the streets who is also a girl dressed as a boy. So very, very beautiful illustrations, and you know, telling this very sad story of what life was like then, and possibly still is, in Afghanistan. So both books that I would recommend.
Thank you.
And this one has won the Middle East Book Award, Sweden's Peter Pan Prize. So if you're doing the 50-50 challenge, this would be a good one for a book that has won an award, a book that has, I think, foreign, I can't remember what the other reasons were. But at any rate, it says all girls should read The Breadwinner. And that was Malala who said that. So anyway.
Great, thank you. John.
Well, I'm going to continue the music theme. I may have spoken about some of these books before, but I've been fooling with the software that's discussed in this one. It's called Chuck. And it's software that you can write programs that create sounds.
Like a synthesizer?
Like a synthesizer, yeah. A software version of a synthesizer. And so you can like make music, or you can make just weird noises.
So each note has a code. Is it done by notes, or is it
Well, the notes are frequencies.
Okay.
And so you actually use the frequencies of the notes. Like there's the tuning fork A is, I think, is 440. And they range from the low, I guess, hundreds on up to the low thousands
of our ability to hear it.
Yeah. And so you actually use the frequencies to define the notes.
And then you can make them longer or shorter, or swoop them up and down. And interesting.
And then you can do things that aren't pitched, like that. You can make hisses and things like that, and it's just a lot of fun to fool with. And this particular program I think of as having a fairly shallow learning curve.
Okay.
It's like you can start learning this and you can do stuff with it right away, pretty much. So this is exciting to me for that reason. And then this is similar. This is a book from MIT, and students there wrote a similar program that's called Super Collider. And both of these, Chuck and Super Collider, are both programs that you can download for free from the internet.
Cool.
So it's wonderful to have free software that you can do exciting things with. So GarageBand is Apple's version of that. It's kind of similar. It's actually this is more for recording.
And is that one that you buy?
I know for a while it came with Apple computers. And I don't know whether it's still available or not. But it used to be free. It used to be part of, well, not free, but it used to come with the computers. And whether, I think they it still is. So.
Something I need the book. So.
And this one this one I know the least about. But it was the same kind of thing, so I thought I would just include it. And then this is a program for doing recording. Okay, and so it is possible to manipulate the sound in the software. You can fiddle with it, but this is more for actually recording sound.
Sound that's outside and.
Yeah, okay. and then you manipulate it once you've recorded it. And this particular program has a reputation for being really good for digitizing record albums. So if you have a record collection that you can no longer listen to very much because playing records destroys them over the long term, and you can actually record your albums and digitize them, and you can use this software to do that, to kind of fiddle with them.
That's cool.
Yeah. So.
And is that free also?
Yeah, this software is
Audacity.
also free. And there's one other piece of software that I wanted to mention. There's no book for it. The only resource there's this piece of software called Ardor, which is
like love?
Yeah, spelled the same way as love. And but it's kind of similar to there's software called Pro Tools that musicians use a lot in professional recording. That you can do a lot of things with, and people will buy that to use in their home studios, their digital studios. But Pro Tools is expensive, and they tend to purposefully kind of make it obsolete periodically, so that
people need to buy the next.
So that you have to buy the next
stage.
one. You can't just keep using the old one, and people get really irritated by that. But Ardor is free. You can just download it, and there are versions for Linux and Mac and Windows. The Windows version is not supported, so it's better to get it for Linux or Macintosh. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I brought a knitting book just to show you picture perfect knits, and I brought this so that I could tell you about our knitting programs that we have at the library. Knitting, crocheting, any kind of needlework or fiber arts. We have that on Wednesday afternoons and also on Saturday afternoons. And I brought this to show you that there are so many things you can do. Look at all of these patterns for cool pictures that you can knit or crochet into your work. There's a hedgehog and a heart and an anchor and I don't know, is it a
snail and a jellyfish?
A snail and a jellyfish and all sorts of cool things. So this will soon be put into the collection at the library. We have a lot of knitting and crocheting and other books that are getting more and more use as more and more people are coming to these programs. And it's a really great way to make and create and do, well, creative things without much expense, but it's also a social activity, because when we come together and meet, there's a lot of nourishing talk and learning and all sorts of things that are going on. So we invite you to come to the library and knit or crochet or do some kind of fiber arts. And both genders are represented. We have a lot of guys and boys who come and participate, as well as girls and women, and we have a lot of fun. So you're welcome to come. Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5 and Saturdays from 1 until 3. Trent, you have some more things there.
I do indeed. No, this is not Sinead O'Connor. She's a little more current than that. This is Brave by Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan, some people may know her from the TV show Charmed. She played the replacement, the replacement of the three. Paige. Paige.
Thank you.
Yes, she's had a pretty decent career in films and in television, but the reason why this is relevant is because she was part of the lawsuit against Harry Weinstein, and a big initiator in a way of the Me Too movement that is currently going on. And this is basically where she tells her story about what happened to her, the various ways that she felt almost victimized in the culture of Hollywood and in our culture in general, and then the people who actually assaulted her, Mr. Weinstein being one of them. And she's basically making the stand and saying, okay, I'm not standing for this anymore, neither should you, neither should we as a culture. It's time to transform. Look at us, we're transforming. Here's my story. And for a long time in the history of humanity, shaving one's head has represented various things. When it's done to you, it's often a symbol of you losing your power and you being put into subjugation. When you do it yourself, it's more a symbol
empowering.
Of taking power to yourself and freeing yourself from the things that have held you down. And so I felt that was a very wise and brave and knowing image to put on the cover of her memoir. So yes, this is available at the library in the 700s on our new shelf. Look for the blue sticker.
Yes, very nice. Thank you. Very good. So I brought a couple of picture books with me today that have been very popular at my house. So we've got Uni the Unicorn, which is the story of believing.
Yes.
So this has got really cute illustrations about a unicorn that believes in little girls.
Oh, yes. I need this book.
This was perfect for my unicorn-loving daughter. And it's got a cute, not just illustrations, but feeling behind it, that, we can believe in what we want to believe. So that was a fun one. And then another fun one for a different daughter of mine is go sleep in your own bed.
Yes.
So this is a really cute story that starts out with Pig going to bed, and there's someone in his spot, which happens to be Cow. And so he yells at Cow, go sleep in your own bed. And then as Cow goes to go sleep in his own bed, somebody's in his spot, and there's Chicken. So he tells Chicken, go sleep in your own bed. Anyways, goes on and on and on until the cat at the very end, who happens to be in the doghouse, gets pushed away, goes to go sleep in his own bed, and that's when the owner of the farm comes out and says, there you are, come sleep in my bed. And the whole farm goes to sleep. So this one has been fun for my toddler who
likes to sleep.
Who doesn't always sleep in her own bed. It's been a favorite book, actually.
Yeah.
So a little bit of humor behind there, but it's actually been a little bit helpful too, because we'll read this. Well, we've read it every night for the last month. At least once. Yes. It did help until she got sick. And then it started over again. So I think I might have to get my own copy of that one.
Oh, that's a good one.
So those are some fun picture books that we have that are new. Great, thank you.
You Need a Unicorn book looks very reminiscent of Mary Blair. She was a Disney artist for a while. She did designs for Sleeping Beauty and Alice in Wonderland. And anyway, I love that art. That's gorgeous.
It's
Very
very beautiful.
You did not bring Sitting Corner, did you?
I didn't.
Good, because I want to talk about it.
Go right ahead.
Good.
Keeping Corner.
So Keeping Corner. Last time we were here, we had a visitor who talked about our visiting author for the Bellon Visiting Author series. And the author's name is Kashmir Sheth. She is from India, but she lives in
Wisconsin
now. At any rate, I was reading one of her books, and it is called Keeping Corner, and talking about bald heads. Okay, so here's this young woman, young girl, and this is based on her aunt's story from the late 1800s. The story is kind of she's telling is in like World War I. So this girl in her family at the age of 2, she's engaged. They've already arranged her marriage. They already, this is who you're going to marry. And by the age of 9, she is married, but she doesn't go to live with her her husband. But then she has to go through a ceremony called the Anu, I think. And that's about the age of 12 or 13.
And they really have never spoken, really.
No, they don't really know each other. But they have occasion to meet one another every now and again. So before she even gets to that point, he is killed by a
Cobra.
It's a poisonous snake. And I just forgot the name of it. It starts with a K or something.
Crate?
No, Colasar or something.
A bad snake.
A bad snake. It bites him and
he
kills
died.
him. And he dies. So she is now a widow. In that time...
And she's 12.
She's 12. And at that time, if you are a widow, you have to keep corner. In other words, grieve and mourn you and your family for a whole year. And had she married and married but had consummated her marriage and gone, she would have lived in her in-laws' house, and they had already had some meetings, and she was looking forward to it. So she would have moved from her home to her in-laws' home to be with her husband, but now she can't. And so one of the things they do is they shave their heads, and they have to wear all black, and they cannot be seen in public, and they cannot do anything.
And never marry again.
And they may never marry again, and they must always have the shaved head. So her older brother has been living in Ahmedabad, which I can't say very well, bigger city. Times are starting to change. He's bringing home information about how women should have more rights, and they're following the teachings of somebody they call Gandhiji, which is a knockoff, I shouldn't say that, of Gandhi, but of the peace transitions and how they don't want to be under British rule and be told what to do all the time, but the British are really clamping down hard on them, and even some of he's trying to encourage some of the young men to go fight for England during World War I, and I don't remember if they did or not, but her brother is really pushing for her to have some kind of meaning in her life, because it doesn't seem fair that at the age of 12, having not even consummated a marriage, she is now never able to marry and never able to do anything more besides, do this 1 year of keeping corner, and then she can go and be a widow for the rest of her life. So I was really fascinated by it, and the descriptions are just so complete. And I've never wanted to visit India. However, I would love to visit where she was, because of the way she's described the beauty of the area and the smells and the sounds. And her brother arranges for a woman to come in and teach her in the home so she can continue her education, and then in the end try to become a teacher. And she has to really convince her parents to let her do that, because they are of the higher caste, and it's unheard of. Once you're a widow, you're always a widow, and you can't change anything, and this would make the family look bad in their small community. Even though bigger cities were doing things differently, they were not allowing, some of the smaller communities were not ready for these changes. And she does do quite a bit of reading and learning, and you know, is able to travel finally to get to start her studies to become a teacher. But it's incredible, you know, what they were expecting these young girls to go through. I mean,
Life would be over.
Life was over for her, and I don't think even in that time she probably never married again. But hopefully she was able to do something with her life, you know, that would make her feel like she had some value and some use.
We'll have to ask Kashmira about her aunt.
Right, and so it's a beautiful book. It's
Characterization is so
oh my gosh.
brilliant.
I was just it was sad, but it was so well written. And if you have the opportunity to see her speak, she will be at ISU, I know, and she'll be at the libraries, both Marshall and Portneuf libraries in March 5th.
March 5th, 6th, and 7th. 5th at our library at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I would, and she's written several other books. Another one about the Lost Boys, is that what it's called?
It's called Boys Without Names.
Boys Without Names.
And it's a beautiful
And
book
I started
also.
that one, have not finished it, but you know, just the beauty of the writing alone, let alone the story, is worth hearing her speak. I'm sure I'm going to be really excited to see her.
Very good. Thank you. I like that book too. John, what else do you have?
Well, I brought some history books in. This is a biography of President McKinley, who's not very, you know, in the pantheon of presidents, he's not all that well known. People mostly remember him for being assassinated, and his vice president was Theodore Roosevelt, and so his assassination was the
Kickstart.
Yeah, it was the vehicle for Roosevelt's ascension to the presidency. And otherwise he might not ever have been elected himself, because he was a rather controversial figure. But McKinley, in many ways, initiated a lot of the policies that Roosevelt took up and completed during his administrations. And he was president during the Spanish-American War, which kind of was America's entry onto the world stage as a major power. So he sort of brought the United States, kind of created the country that we became in the 21st century. And
Interesting.
so this book is kind of somewhat of a reevaluation of him. And he was president for about 3 years, so it was not, his administration was abbreviated, but it was not short. And so he seems like somebody who deserves more attention than he's gotten. So Robert W. Mary.
Quite an interesting contrast here. I'm looking at the screen and seeing the face here and your face at the same time.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but it's
two faces.
So it's Candace Millard recommends it. She's written some books about Roosevelt. I think she did River of Doubt, and she's done some other a history book on Churchill.
Okay.
That got quite popular. So.
Right.
And if she thinks it's good, it's got to be good.
Good. Do you want to do another one?
Yeah, I'll do another one. This one is called Code Girls, and this is kind of a subject that I really am fascinated with. Is the use of cryptography in the Second World War to defeat the Axis powers, and in the United States, in Britain, they had a place called Bletchley, where they started out with about 30 people, and by the end of the war, there were thousands of people there, and they actually used a lot of women in Britain to run the machines.
Because the men were fighting.
Because the men were fighting. And then in the United States, there's a place called Arlington Hall, which was where a lot of the decryption was done in the United States. It was in Washington, D.C., and they hired thousands of women from all walks of life to come in and do mathematics and decoding, women with different skills, language skills and mathematics skills, and they put them to work as decoders. And they were never able to discuss anything that they did.
Ever.
Ever. It was like the war ended, and it's like, okay, be quiet. You can't talk about this. And so it's finally that history has been kind of opened up, and this is a lot about the story of some of the women who were central to the effort, and also kind of an oral history from a lot of the surviving women who were still around to be interviewed when this book was written. So,
did any of them write anything like journals or anything to keep track of what happened, or just going from memory, or?
Well, they were kind of inhibited. There was an inhibition of secrecy, but she was able to get a lot of information out of them. So.
Cool.
It reminds me of the NASA program.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. It opened things up a lot for women. I don't think the world would be the way it is if women hadn't been pulled into a lot of these efforts during the Second World War or the space race.
Right.
It would be a very different world. So.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Let's go right over to you, Trent, because I see that red book and I want to hear about it.
Well, this book is called Calder, The Conquest of Time. This is about the sculptor Alexander Calder. He is credited with the creation of the mobile. Did I say that correctly?
Mobile?
Mobile, yes. And this was viewed as a significant development in the field of sculpture. So here we've got some pictures of some of his work here. Notice there's a lot of space in his work. Very thin supportive elements with
dangling things.
Yes. Some of his early work actually wasn't suspended. It was anchored to the ground.
From the bottom.
Yes, and then he started putting things out into the air. But this traces his beginnings and goes through his early years. This is a part of a two-part biography. The second part hasn't been published yet, so we will definitely be on the lookout for that, for the second volume to come out. But he lived a very fascinating life. He was associated with many of the leading artists and musicians and philosophers and intellectuals of the early 20th century.
Where was he located? Where did
let's
he
see.
do his work?
He was brought up in Philadelphia, California, and New York. He was friends with Georges Braque, Marcel Duchamp, Martha Graham, Joan Miro, Piet Mondrian, and Virgil Thomson, among other people.
Cool.
So he very much an American of both coasts, and so I think it promises to be a very in-depth but fascinating read.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
So I've been listening to an audiobook in my car, Crooked House by Marlene Bateman. This is it's one of the Erica Coleman mysteries. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that one. But Erica goes around and solves mysteries. She used to be a police officer, and now she's left the police force, and now she goes and does her own investigating. And one of her friend's daughters is a college student, and her roommate has started having these really strange accidents. And so Erica has been called in to see what is going on, what's causing these accidents. So the first accident was she got pushed into traffic and then somebody hurried and pulled her out. Kind of random. The second one was the brakes in her car went out. And that's when Erica got called in. But then we've had a car bomb. We've had some poison.
Oh no.
Somebody is trying to get rid of Liz. And at first she's thinking they're after her old house that they call Crooked House because the eaves are crooked. And it's a very old historic home, and it also has very historic furniture and artwork inside. But as they start to investigate, there's some other things going on that it might not be all about the house. because, you know, lots of times people murder about money. So I'll give you that little hint there. So this one's been a fun one to listen to. I was trying to look on here who actually does the reading, and it doesn't say. Really quick. Read by Leonie Ingram. She does really good voices for the different characters, which is always a fun thing. So, and then real quick, I have another book. This is actually a young adult new book. This is called The Forgotten Book by, I don't even know how to say this name. We'll say Glacier is the last name. This is a fun, different kind of book. I actually picked it up because of the cover. It's very detailed. It looks like she's coming up out of a book.
Beautiful.
So the main character goes to a school, and nothing really happens in the West Wing, but that's where the library is. But now with all the technology everybody has today, the typical library doesn't get used so much. The computer lab gets used more often. And she's in there cleaning things up because she wants her literary group to start meeting in there. And she comes across a book. It's really old, and it looks like a journal, and it's written about things that have happened in the school. And she takes it to her dorm room to read it, and she just really wants to write in it. So she flips to the end of it and she writes in it, and then the next day something crazy happens in the cafeteria that happens to be what she wrote in the book.
Whoa.
So she does a few experiments, and sure enough, whatever she writes in the book comes true. Well, then of course you have to add the twist to it. Get your little climax is somebody is after the book, and they're willing to kill for it. Dun, dun, dun. So this is a brand new young adult book.
Great.
It's got a little bit of that magic mystery, but then, you know,
Something's
suspense.
going to happen.
So I gotta hurry and finish it because I'm not quite done. So,
Great.
No.
so it's not ready yet, but if you want to read it, it's the Forgotten Book.
Good. So,
I am going to talk about one more. I think I talked about this last time, but I wanted to share it again if I haven't.
you did.
Okay, so again, the story about Sasha, who was born male but identifies as female, and is on a bus in Oakland, and somebody sets fire to her dress. And it's the story of what happens and how this person, Sasha, goes on to forgive the person who did this. Well, this has not only won an ALA award for, I think it has 2 awards. I don't know why I didn't grab both. I think it is. I know it won the Excellence in Young Adult Nonfiction. It was a finalist, so that sticker is going to go on this front cover. And I believe,
So, true story?
yes, it is a true story. Oh, I was pretty sure it had won one other award, but I don't seem to have that one right in front of my face. Anyway, I think it also won the Stonewall, or one of,
Okay.
or it was a Stonewall nominee, but I can't for some reason. Yes, it did. So it will also get this sticker. Stonewall is an award given for exceptional merit relating to gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender experience. So this was a double
Award winner.
award winner, or at least nominee finalist. So that is one that is very, very well written, and it's extremely impressive to me that Sasha can forgive this person for what they did, and it's just really well written and a good story.
Did you have one more there that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, well, favorite author. I think I talked about her other one. Marissa Mayer wrote the series, The Lunar Chronicles, which are
Yes.
all on the back here. It started out with Cinder,
And Scarlet.
Scarlet, then Crest. So you have Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and then it went on to Winter, Stars Above, and Fairest. And they're wonderful stories. The lunar characters who are characters. The people on the moon are called lunars, and they have a special ability to pull a glamour over themselves and become something different or look different. And then the Earthens, the Earth people. And Cinder is a lunar, but you don't know that in the very first story right away. However, she has taken it on further. So this is now the graphic novel version that follows the last book. And Wires and Nerve is the series, and this is the next one in that series called Gone Rogue. And this is where you find Scarlet and her dear friend Wolf, who is one of the mutants that the Lunars created, and he is convinced by one of his former Wolfpack people that Cinder, who is now the queen of Lunar, she should be able to do something to change him back. But can she? And will Wolf come back?
Wow, good.
I absolutely I have read every single one of these books. So yeah, it's probably really worth reading.
Very good. Thank you. And I think our time is about up, so thank you for joining us. We will welcome you to come to the library and tell us what you've been reading. We'd like to hear that, and come join us at the library and check out some books. These are some suggestions. Thank you and goodbye.